Okay, today we're going to be reviewing how to find the greatest common factor of two numbers. Okay, first off, the greatest common factor is going to be, like I said, the factor. So when we think of factors of numbers, we're thinking of two numbers that make up the product to get an answer. For example, for 6, the factors of 6 would be 1 times 6 and then 2 times 3. So let's say we have two numbers. Okay, let's go with 8 and 24. Okay, to find the greatest common factor, you can use many ways. You can list the times tables, which we will do that. That's going to be method 1. Okay, list your multiplication facts. Okay. Now, if I list my multiplication facts here, for 8, I always want to start with 1 times itself. So 1 times 8 would be a factor. And then I kind of think about if 2 can fit into 8, and 2 does, so it'll be 2 times 4. Then I ask myself, does 3 go into 8? And does 4 go into 8? And it does, so it looks like we're done with our factors of 8. Now we're going to do the same thing with 24. So I can do 1 times 24. I asked myself, can 2 go into 24? And it does, so that's 2 times 12. Then I asked myself, can 3 go into 24? And it can, because 2 plus 4 is 6, using the divisibility rule of 3. So we got 3 times 8. Then I asked myself, does 4 go into 24? And it does. 4 goes into 24 6 times. 5 doesn't go in. 6, we have it here, so it looks like we're looping back. Okay, now when we're looking for the greatest common factor, okay, what essentially we're doing is we're looking for the biggest one, because they're going to have common factors. We just want the biggest one. So when looking at these, it looks like they do have a 1 in common, but I don't want that one. They do have a 2 in common also, okay, and they do have a 4 in common. And I don't have any more factors of 8 except for 8, so I want to check to make sure that 8 also is on the other side, and it is. So the greatest common factor of 8 and 24 is 8, because that's the biggest factor they have in common. Okay, so this is one way you can find the greatest common factor. Okay. All right, method 2 is to use factor trees. Okay. So I'm going to take my number 8 and my number 24, and we're going to just create a factor tree. That means we're going to use 2 little lines like this, and think of 2 numbers that make 8 when we multiply. So I'm going to use 2 times 4. I know 2 and 4 make 8. Now 2 is already a prime number, so I'm done with my tree here. That one's done. But 4, I can still break it up, so I'm going to break it up into 2 and 2. Keeping in mind that 2 is a prime, so it's done, and 2 is also a prime, so it's done. So in this case, I have a 2, another 2, and another 2 as the prime factorization of 8. Now I'm going to do the same thing for 24. Now for 24, I know it's 6 times 4. You could have used 3 and 8, you could have used 2 and 12, you can use, probably not 1 and 24, because we can't break up 1 anymore. So with 6, it's 2 and 3. 2 is already prime, 3 is already prime. 4 I can break up into 2 times 2. 2 is already prime, and 2 is already prime. So my prime factorization here is 2 times 3 times 2 times 2. Now from here, you need to just look for the prime numbers they have in common. So I know that they both have a 2 in common, so I'm going to circle that. They have another 2 in common, so I'm going to circle that. And they have another 2 in common, so I circle that. So in each side, I circled 3 2's. So 2 times 2 times 2, 2 times 2 times 2. So that turns out to be my greatest common factor. Multiplying the 2 times 2 gives me a 4 times another 2 gives me an 8, and that's going to be my GCF, okay, or my greatest common factor. Okay, we get to do the same thing now for the next method. This time I'm not going to use factor trees. I'm going to just use my upside down division. So method 3. I'm going to use an upside down division model. For each number. So here's my number 8 and my number 24, same idea. So what I mean is I am going to make this upside down division, and I can only divide by prime numbers, so 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, and so forth. So because this is an even number, I know I'm going to divide by 2. That leaves me with a 4. 4 I can also divide by 2 again, and that leaves me with a 2. And all of these numbers are now prime, so I'm done. Now I'm going to do the same thing for 24, but I can only use prime numbers. Okay, so that's the difference between upside down division and factor trees. Factor trees, if you notice, I could just use any 2 factors and then break down my trees. Here I am forced to use only prime numbers to divide. So I can divide by 2 here, leaving me with a 12. I can divide again by 2, leaving me with a 6. Divide by 2 again, leaving me with a 3, and I cannot divide 3 anymore. So in this case, we do the same thing. We see which prime numbers they have in common. So they both have a 2, they have another 2, and they have another 2. So I take those. There's 3 2's that they share. So 2 times 2 times 2 is going to give me an 8, and that's going to be the greatest common factor of 8 and 24. Okay. All right. Now my last method is my favorite method of doing greatest common factor, and method 4 for me is doubling up, okay, using upside down division. What I mean by that is I'm going to take the 8 and the 24, notice how I'm writing them closer to each other, and I'm going to take a long upside down division symbol, and now I have to think of a number that both 8 and 24 have in common, but I can only use prime numbers. So again, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, etc. Okay, so 8 and 4 both have 2 in common, leaving me here 8 divided by 2 is 4, 24 divided by 2 is 12. Then I ask myself, can 4 and 2 have anything in common? And the prime number they have in common is a 2. So I'm going to have 2 left here, and then a 6 left here. And then I ask myself, do 2 and 6 have anything in common that is prime? And yes, I can divide them by 2, leaving me with 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 1 and 3 don't have anything in common. So I take the prime factorization that is on the outside, this part here. This is my greatest common factor. We multiply those 3 numbers together to get our greatest common factor of 8 and 24, which is 8. I hope this gave you a different view on how you can find that greatest common factor between 2 numbers.